Okay. So we just went through the 3 weeks. And for many people, these 3 weeks were mamash hell. Almost every single person that I spoke to, including myself, had a very, very difficult 3 weeks. And the reason why is because there is an actual reality that takes place during the 3 weeks that every single Jewish person has to go through difficulties. That leads with a destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. The things in the Jewish calendar did not happen thousands of years ago. The Torah is not a history book. It is a spiritual map of reality. That means that whatever happened in the Torah is happening every year at that time. Every year at Rosh Hashanah, you literally have a creation of the universe. Every Shavuot, we're literally getting the Torah anew. Every 3 weeks, there is an actual breaking that's taking place emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually. And it culminates with the complete breaking of the Beit HaMikdash, which means the concealment of HaShem from the world and from our lives. But it ended. And we had something called Parshat Nachamu, or Shabbat Nachamu. That means consolation, comforting. I want to read you a piece of the Parsha. I'm going to paraphrase for a second, but I want you to pay attention to every word that I'm saying. This Parsha, Vayet Hanan, is one of the most powerful Parshas in the whole Torah. It's in my top 5, if you could say such a thing. Everything that you need is literally in Vayet Hanan. And I'm going to read you a piece. And I want you, if you can even, to close your eyes and just listen. This is what the Torah says. This is not a commentary. This is not a perus. This is not an interpretation. This is literally what the Torah says. At that time, HaShem will scatter you there. You will invest in authorities created by man with no actual influence of its own. From there you will seek HaShem your God, and you will find him. If you search for him with all of your heart and with all of your soul. This is not a Rebbe Nachman Sefer. This is literally what the Torah says. When you are in distress and all of these things have befallen you, at the end of days in the final generation before the coming of the Mashiach, you will return to HaShem your God and you will hear and internalize his voice. You should know and take it to your heart that Hashem is the only genuine influence in the world. In the spiritual world, in the physical world, there's nothing else besides him. Why has all of this occurred to you at the end of days? That you should know, Ein od milvado. There is nothing else besides him. Is this too loud for you guys? That's okay. So we're learning a very important thing. The Gemara says that I can't wait till the days of Mashiach, because the redemption is going to happen in that generation. But one thing, please do not have me be around for it. Thank you. That the sages who understood what we would have to go through in our generation said, we can't wait for the coming of Mashiach. It is going to be so incredible, something you can't imagine. At the same time, please God, don't let me be there. Why? What were they so in tune to? What did they understand that made them so apprehensive about wanting to live in this generation that all the sages agree this is the final generation? The answer is very simple. Look at your own life. How much anger, how much sadness, how much anxiety, how many fears, how much trauma, how much addiction, how much lack of clarity, how much confusion. We think that the Gog and Magog, this war that's going to make everybody crazy, is a physical war. It's not a physical war. You're living in it right now. And why did HaShem do this to us? Why is HaShem placing us in a generation like that? So that you should know that there's nothing else besides HaShem. What does that mean? What does that mean? Why should it be that I'm going to go through tremendous suffering and as a result of that, I'm going to know Hashem exists? Does that make any sense? Anyone sitting here, I'm really asking, does that make sense to anybody? No, it doesn't make any sense. Again, I understand, let's say I'm not trying, I'm not looking. I am trying, I am looking. So why should I be suffering? I want to read you a piece from Likutei Moharan. Please listen to what I'm about to read to you, and then we're going to think about it for a second. This is at the end of Likutei Moharan. There are hundreds of lessons. This is one of the final ones. And I think it encapsulates what is the struggle. This is Likutei Moharan Tinana, Siman Kuf Yutet, 119. Diber imanu kama pamim me'inyan Yisurei olam hazeh. Rabbi Nachman spoke with us a number of times about the Yisurim that a person has to go through in this world. The pain that a person has to go through in this world. Shekol b'nei ha'olam kulo mele'im Yisurim. That every single person who lives in this world is filled with suffering. You hear? You see the guy in the house down the street and you think maybe he figured it out. You see the celebrity on TikTok, he looks happy with his 5th wife and his 400 kids, and you think maybe he figured it out. You see a rapper or you see an athlete and you go, wow, this guy got it. Comes along Rabbi Nachman to tell you what you already know. There is not a human being in this world who came into this world and does not suffer tremendously. There is no such thing as somebody in this world who does not have tremendous Yisurim. To the extent that he says, he says, nobody has olam hazeh. There is no person who has olam hazeh. What does that mean? In the words of our generation, the Talmidei Chachamim of the rap world, the good life. How many of us are looking for the good life? Rabbi Nachman says it never happened. There is no such thing. There is no olam hazeh at all. V'afilu hashirim hagadolim, and even the very wealthy and the very privileged, V'afilu asarim, even princes and kings and authorities, ein lahem shum olam hazeh klal. They have no olam hazeh at all. Ki kol yamehem ka'as u'machovot, because all of their days are filled with agony and suffering. V'chulam eleim tordot u'dagot v'atzvut v'yagom v'anachat tamid. They're full of troubles and worries and misery and sadness and aggravation always. V'chol echad yesh yisurim yuchadim, and everyone has their own particular unique type of suffering. Ve'en gam echad mikol hagvarim asarim. And not one of these rich, wealthy members of high society, shu lo akol keseder kirtzonot tamid, has anything in their life go the way they want it to. V'chulam kecha meleim yisurim u'dagot tamid. They're all filled with yisurim, with worries always. V'zeh barur v'yadu l'chol mi shebaki katzat behem u'darchechem. This is clear and known to anyone who is familiar with any of them. Do you hear what he's saying? We think, okay, so Rabbi Nachman lived in Ukraine in a shtetl. What does he know about wealth? What does he know about big houses? What does he know about cars and vacations? What does he know about anything? He grew up in Ukraine where they had no technology. Can I tell you something? Life was the same exact way 200 years ago as it is now. Is the same 1,000 years ago as it is now. There was always the wealthy, there was always the well-to-do, there was always the ones who looked on paper like they were living good lives. Rabbi Nachman was very familiar with those people. He was speaking to those people. And he says, look, listen to me. Anyone who knows any of them intimately will tell you they have just as much troubles, trials, and difficulties as you do. Nobody is avoiding this. There is a student of Rav Natan, and he was trying very hard to live a life with Rabbi Nachman's teachings, and he didn't have a lot of money. And he had trouble getting food to his kids. And his wife said to him, look at those people, those princes. They have no trouble getting food. No trouble feeding their children. In hearing his wife's complaint they didn't have enough food to feed their children, he said, look, the Tsar's wife has enough money to buy whatever she needs. Yet even she has to schlep many hundreds of miles each year with her children to a health spa in the hope of curing their stomach disorders. So be thankful that our children at least have an appetite. Nobody avoids the Yisurim. And whatever looks like somebody has, they don't have something else. Because there is nobody in the world since the beginning of time that their life is not filled with Yisurim. V'chama pamin dibarnu mizeh. Rabbeinu spoke to us a number of times about this. V'ayenu re'im be'enenu kol zot. And we all saw it with our own eyes. V'afilu mi shenidmei alav. And even the one that appeared to him, shleish lo olam hazeh. He had olam hazeh. He had the good life. But shleimut, he had wholeness. He figured things out. He had a family, or he didn't. He had money. He had a house. He had cars, whatever it was. And he had all the tanugim. He had all the delights that you want. Osher, he had wealth. Unchasim, he had possessions. V'chavod, he had honor from people. V'hod rav, he had tremendous riches. V'armonim, he had enormous palaces. V'chelim, he had tremendous vessels in their house, the amazing, beautiful vessels. Niflaim, wondrous things. V'dachshitin, beautiful jewelry, usagulot malachim, the resources that kings do. Im yistaklu botev, if anybody were to look well, to really truly look at their life, hu gam alei ka'as u'machovot arbe tamid, that person has tremendous anger and vexation and suffering always. Kinir bechush. This is empirically obvious. There's no reason for me to even continue to explain this to you if you have a brain. Bekad gado mistakel. Katzat behem be'emet. And you honestly look without any type of preconceived notions. If you're able to look without the emotions, without the desires, and just to look at the facts, you will see that every single person in this world suffers. Uchmo shamar Shlomo Melech. And Shlomo Melech, the smartest person who ever lived, the richest person, he himself said, Gam kol yamav ka'as u'machuvot. Every day of a person is filled with vexation and struggles and agony. Uchtiv adam la'amal yulad katzar yamiv usavar rogez. And it says in Eov, a man is born to toil, he lives a short time, and he is sated with anxiety. This includes every human being Shabbat that's in the world. Mikotan va'ad gadol, whether he's small or big. Ki kulam noldu la'amal melayim rogez v'yisurim. Because every single person is born into this world to toil and is full of anxiety and suffering. Ve'ein shum eitza v'tachabula v'yinatzel me'amal v'yagon hazeh. And there is no advice, there's no ploy that you can use to be spared from this toil and sadness. Ki'im, except. Im livrach la'Hashem yiparach. That you flee and you run to Hashem with everything that you have. V'la'asok b'Torah. And you're busy with spirituality, the Torah, being Jewish. So, anyone who reads this, it doesn't sound like there's any nachamu here. You guys thought you were going to get all that comforting. This is the saddest, scariest lesson in the history of our lives. You agree? When does it get better? I just want you to understand what Rabbi Nachman is saying. You want to know the beginning of the end of your suffering? Stop thinking there's a person who's not. Stop thinking there's a situation you can put yourself in financially, emotionally, psychologically, that you will not have to go through difficulties in your life. It never happened. No matter what music videos you're watching, no matter what magazines you're looking at, no matter what Facebook pages that you're on, Instagram, and I don't know, I'm not on these things anymore, but whatever it is, Olam Deshikra, it's a world of lies. Nobody has figured it out. Uchmo shemuva b'midrash, like it's brought in the midrash. Adam lamol yulad. Man is born to toil. You have to toil. It's a Torah. It's a fact. You cannot avoid toiling. Ashrei mi shamalo b'Torah. Ashrei to the person who does it in spirituality. I've been telling my students for years, you don't have a choice about whether you are going to toil in this world. You only choose. Do I want to toil in people, places, and things? With intermediaries? With bosses and with spouses? With society and with governments? With this business adventure and this one? Trying to figure out the right way so I can live the good life. Or you can toil in trying to find HaShem. And then you don't have to toil at all in the physical world. Ashrei to the person who chooses the second one. This is the Midrash. In other words, since every person is born to toil, he can't avoid this. Even if he owns all of the money in the whole friggin' world. He is going to experience tremendous toil, suffering, and worries in his lifetime. Al Ken. Therefore the Pasuk says, HaChacham eina birosho. A wise man has his eyes ahead of him. I want everybody to come back off your phones and listen to what I'm about to tell you. Because the answer is not on your phone. And I know this is a very anxiety-provoking lesson, but Bezrat Hashem, it's going to get really good in a second. I just need to start off by laying the facts in front of you. Because I'm telling you right now that Rabbi Nachman knew 200 years ago why we would suffer so much in this generation. And it's not because of anything that's unique to us or technological developments, even though those have all made it harder. There's one reason. Because Rabbi Nachman says, that the Gemara says that there's 7 versions of the Yetzer Hara over the course of history. The Gemara lists 7 versions of influence which are bringing a person away from the good in his life. But he says in the final generation, before the coming of Mashiach, they're going to have a brand new Yetzer Hara that never was. The Koach Medameh, the power of imagination. That the whole world is going to be busy chasing after something that does not exist. And that will be the cause of that suffering. That the Gog Magog war that we're facing is coming from the secular world, teaching you about dreams that don't exist, goals that are not real, realities that never took place. And we're all invested in it, suffering every single day, trying to find the good life. And guess what? Nobody figured it out. You have one choice though. You can turn all of your toil in the physical world to the toil of Torah. That doesn't just mean learning Torah. It means the search for HaShem. If you put all of your physical toil at work and your family, at home, with this, with that person, with this society, with this situation, with these clothing, with this thing, and you take all of that toil and you place it in the search for Hashem, Rabbeinu, the Midrash, the Gemara says you will not have to toil anywhere else, but you have to toil somewhere. Va'az ashrei lo. And then ashrei to the person who chooses Hashem. Ki nitzo me'amal ha'olam hazeh, because he's going to be spared from all of the suffering of this world. V'zoche l'chayei olam haba, and he's going to have the zchut and the merit to experience the world to come. And I want you to understand something very important. When he's talking about olam haba, he's not just talking about after your life here. I want you to listen to what Rabbi Nachman says now. It's going to sound a little confusing. I'm going to do my best to explain it. And then Bezrat Hashem, I'm going to mechazik you the rest of the lesson. Ana v'amar Rabbeinu. Our Rebbe taught us, Zichronan livracha, that his memory should be a blessing. Hinei akol omrim. Look. Everyone says, Sheyesh olam hazeh v'olam haba, that there is this world and there's the next world. V'hinei olam haba, behold, olam haba ma'aminim. Sheyesh olam haba, we believe that there's olam haba. Efshar yesh gam olam hazeh, it's possible that there is this world also. What does that mean? Yeah, olam haba is real. This world, it's possible it exists. What does that mean? We're living in it. It's the only one that we actually know of. Gam ken be'ez olam. It's possible it exists somewhere in the universe. That there is such a thing as this world. And what is he saying, olam hazeh? He's not just saying the physical world. He's talking about the good life. Ki b'cha nireh shehu hagenom. But I'll tell you the truth. This world looks a lot more to me like Gehenna. Ki kulam eleim yisurim gedolim tamid, because everybody's suffering every single day. V'amar, and the Rebbe also said, she'ein nimsa shum olam hazeh klal. There's no such thing as olam hazeh at all. So this is a very difficult lesson to understand. Not the part about the suffering. Thank God someone finally said that this is like Gehenna, because I felt like that my whole life. But what do you mean there's no olam hazeh? How do you say such a thing? We're living in it. So I'm gonna draw from a commentary on Likutei Moharan somewhere else to explain this. It's called Paparot LaChochma. There is a very amazing Torah. And he says there, because we believe that olam haba certainly does exist, we can't say it's separate from this world. Listen to what he's saying. I know this is a little deep. I have to challenge the mind a little bit. We think of olam haba and olam hazeh as two separate entities. But if one leads into the other, then they're really one thing. It's one process. And you can't separate and detach this from the next because it's really all one process. Whatever a person experiences in life, physically, materially, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, including each day's every thought, word, action, it's only for one purpose, olam haba. Like Rabbeinu says elsewhere in Likutei Moharan, a person must always be mindful of olam haba. What does it mean? It's to affix your thought on olam haba. When you get up in the morning, before you begin anything, you remind yourself of omaba. And then afterwards, you should do this in particular. with every aspect of your life, understand every physical action, every event, every circumstance is not for this world. It's to bring you there. I want to present to you omaba and omaba in a way you never thought of it. Based on something that Rabbi Nachman teaches. It's based on the Arizal. We think of this world and then the next. We think of here and then there's HaShem. Rabbi Nachman explains the only revelation of godliness we have in this physical world is, so to speak, Kivyachol Hashem's feet. This is the reason why we're having so much trouble finding Him. And in all of the higher spiritual worlds, it goes higher and higher and closer to Hashem's essence. A greater and greater revelation of Him. What does that mean? That means that if you're looking in this world for Hashem, you're not going to find Him. The only way to find Hashem is through the Torah, which is not shaykh to this world at all. This world is like the feet of worlds. And omaba is like the body and the head, and there's many levels of spirituality. What happens when we think of this world as, so to speak, it's this and then it's the next? It's like saying, I have feet and then I have a body. Do you have feet and then you have a body? Or your feet are part of your body? Can you imagine you had little animals on your feet and they had no idea because they couldn't see because you had very dark clothes on that there was anything besides the feet of the body? And they were busy day and night working on those feet, making little homes on those feet, going to work on those feet, hanging out by the water cooler on those feet, talking about the sports scores on those feet. And we're wondering, where is this person? Where is this person? I'm looking everywhere for him, but I can't find him. And the answer is because we are on the feet. But the Torah goes all the way up. Spirituality goes all the way up. Meaning simply, if you're looking in the physical world for Hashem, it is impossible for you to find Him. Because this is the most concealed level of reality of all the spiritual worlds, and we're in the final generation, meaning Hashem has never been more concealed in history than it is right now. But this is Shabbat Nachamu. What about comfort? Where's the comfort? I want to read you this pasuk again that Rabbi Nachman brings in Likutei Moharan. I want to give you a chidush, and then I want to show you how, despite everything that we just said, we all have an ability to live omaba even when you're in this physical world. To experience all the good, not just that is here, but apparently there is none, but to experience the good that will be right now. Because even though we said all of this, Rabbi Nachman said explicitly, occasionally when Hashem helps a person, the world to come that we can experience in this world is unimaginable. So this sounds like a contradiction, no? What's the pasuk that he says? HaChacham eina b'rosho. A wise person His eyes are looking forward. I want to do a more literal interpretation. HaChacham einav. A wise person's eyes, berosho. They're with his head. That's what it literally means. In his head, with his head. What's the Rosh? Rabbi Nachman says elsewhere. Rosh b'nei Yisrael. The Tzaddik. Who's the Rosh of the Jewish people? The Tzaddik. Who's a wise person? His eyes are towards the Tzaddik. That person can experience omaba and omazeh. So how do we know this isn't just a nice Breslov tight explanation of the pasuk? I want to show you how explicit this is in the Torah. Are you ready? Where does the toiling come from? Why are we struggling so much? Because Adam HaRishon was in the garden. And he was sophisticated. He wasn't simple. And he was very smart. And he thought he had a better way than HaShem did for him to make his jangi, for him to make his money, for him to get his good life. And as a result of that, HaShem says from now on, every single person is going to have to toil now to experience good. We know, according to Chazal, according to the Kabbalists, according to the Hasidic masters, that every single thing that happens in creation from the beginning until the end is in the very first parsha of the Torah, in Bereshit. So the beginning was the curse. What was the end of the parsha? I'm going to bring you there. I know this is kind of out of the way, but I want to show you that it's really not. And this is the most important thing that you can hear, and I'm being honest and I'm speaking from my heart. The pasuk says, there was a man named Lemech. This is the end of the parsha. Lemech had sons. One son, V'yikra et shemo Noach. He named his son Noach. Le'morzeh. And what did he say? Yenachamenu mima'asenu. This one is going to give us nachamu. This one is going to give us consolation. From what? From the toiling. Umitzvon yadenu. From the suffering of our life. So you have in the beginning of the portion the issue, the fallout, the breaking that we're all experiencing in our life. But at the end of the parsha, Hashem does not leave any generation orphaned. There is no group of people who does not have the ability to leave their suffering because Hashem is El Rachum. He loves you. He believes in you. He's empathetic in a way that you couldn't possibly understand. So where is the Nachamu? There's only one. His name is Noach. The Arizal says that Noach is the beginning of the concept of a tzaddik in the world. And that Noach reincarnates as Moshe Rabbeinu. And there was no tzaddik before Noach. So the issue is in humanity. But Hashem sends the refuah. He sends Nachamu. His name is Noach. What is the one thing that nobody wants to do? To say this person's my rabbi and I'm going to follow him. Everybody in our generation is suffering, not because they're not good people, not because they're not smart, not because they're not passionate, not because they don't want good, not because of anything. There's nothing wrong, except one thing. There is no nachamu, there is no consolation in this world except for Noach. Nobody left Egypt except with Moshe. And anybody who was not, he just said, I don't want to do this. Like Korach said, why should I say there's only one? There could be many tzaddikim. There's many people who can help. There's many good rabbis. It's true. But there's not many Noachs. There's not many Moshes. And he is the key to Nachamu. He is the healing. I want everyone to think to themselves who's here. You don't have to raise your hand. Does anyone here have a rabbi that they follow no matter what he says? Comes along the Torah to tell you, do you know the reason why we're suffering so much? Because you don't have a tzaddik in your life. And because HaShem made it impossible after the curse that any Jew should be able to experience Nachamu without Nachamu. We read this book and this book. We have the Baal Shem Tov stories, and we have this Chassidus, and we have this cute story, and we have this Torah lesson that we go to, and this sweet rabbi, and we're all completely lost and confused. I know the nicest, smartest, most caring people in the world who are suffering the worst suffering for one reason. They don't have a tzaddik in their life that they follow. Why? Because we refuse to admit that somebody knows more than us. We refuse to believe that there is a person in this world who has figured it out. We actually, it's funny, I was thinking about it in my Hibodadut, we have no problem thinking that there is such a person in the secular world. Which is insane. People with no education. People off the street who have a certain talent, they come along and we bow to them and think they've figured it out. But a spiritual master who struggled his whole life every single day to try and find real good in his life, to become a master of the spiritual, psychological, emotional, physical world, he actually does it. And we say, how could it be that there's a person who actually figured it out? Trust me, you believe many people did that have no idea what's going on. And there is a person within your people who he was sent to this world only to teach you. And what is the one reason we're all suffering? From the power of imagination, from false goals, from bad advice, from no direction, from lack of clarity. The answer is we don't have Noach. Because why was his name Noach? Yenachemenu mimaasenu. He was sent to lessen the curse. He was sent to take us out even though we're still in this physical world. By the way, just on a side note, the middle of this world, Yenachemenu, is Nachum. And even though everybody wants to say, here we go again, Breslov, they made it up, they're the only ones who say things like this, they worship their rabbi. Have those people figured it out? Have you met anybody who figured it out? Rabbi Nachman says if everybody knew who the tzaddik really was, they would have no free will, because everyone would follow Moshe. You have to choose Moshe. The Jews in Mitzrayim had to choose Moshe. You didn't just leave Egypt, even though Moshe desperately wanted to help everybody. But a person who wants to experience real good in their life, I'm telling you right now, as a person who has gone through tremendous Isurim that are unspeakable. There is Nachum. There really is. You can live the happiest, simplest, most joyful, most relaxed, most tranquil life. But you won't find it in this world. I want to read you something which Rav Natan said. And even though many of us think to ourselves, Rav Natan, he must have been much different, he was a rabbi, he was a tzaddik, I'm telling you right now, if anybody reads his biography, you'll see he's exactly like every single one of us. And what does he say to his son? My dear son, greetings to you and your wife and children. May Hashem watch over you. May He give you long lives full of good and true life. I have received 2 letters from you, and they please me very much. But I have absolutely no time to answer them right now because I need to travel to another city today with Hashem's help. I was all ready, as I wrote you, to leave here on the Wednesday of Parsha B'Shalach, but it was the Ratzon of Hashem that I remain here until now. I don't know what to write you. But your great love and intense longing to hear words of truth through my letters compel me to set down what Hashem sends to my pen. I already wrote you in the letter before, the world is full of cries and groans and there's no number. They are all crying money. Everyone has his own special cry, as if his needs are greater than everybody else's. The bitterness is so harsh that their souls nearly leave them. Even the fact that they're alive is a miracle. Where does their vitality come from? The Brit Melach, the covenant of salt, the Tzaddik. That Rabbi Nachman says in the Likutei Moharan that without the Tzaddik, the bitterness of this world would be unbearable. Remember this well, because the more a person is aware that the essence of his vital sustenance is from the Tzaddik, who is the foundation of the world, who is constantly sweetening the world's bitterness, the more he draws this vitality over himself, the more he sweetens the bitterness of his life. The closer a person is to the Tzaddik and the fuller is his belief in him, the more his bitterness is sweetened. We must rejoice over this all the time, and we must cast our burdens onto Hashem, rely on Him completely, because all He does is for the best. Strive constantly with Torah and Tefillah. Stay happy with all the practices and suggestions that Rabbeinu has taught us. Study them over and over again. I am so preoccupied with all that I have in my mind, I can't go on. May Hashem have rachamim on you, and may He sweeten and annul for you and your family all the harsh judgments. May He open the way for you at all times to serve Him with joy, with eagerness, and gratitude for everything good that you have. The words of your Father who longs and desires for all of your good. I remember when I first started learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings, I felt very uncomfortable. Because he keeps speaking about this tzaddik that everybody needs. And that sounds like another religion to me. But what do we learn in the beginning? That in the time at the end of times, that in the final generation, Hashem is going to disperse us all over the world, amongst the nations of the world and their ideologies, and we are going to believe in their gods, in their money, in their clothes, in their idea of happiness. And he says the most distressful events are going to fall upon you. Why? Because through this alone you will search for Hashem. But I have an obvious question for you. Does anyone know how to search for Hashem? Do you know how to search for Hashem? I searched for Hashem and it led me to be in a psych ward. I know another guy who searched for Hashem and it ended up in the most bitter divorce. I know another guy who searched for Hashem and he's living in a mountain alone, separated from society. I know another person, he searched for HaShem, and he's suffering from the worst depression and anxiety. If I told you that this was a meeting about how to make money, and we're going to learn from Steve Jobs how to do it. Look, everybody lifts their head up. Oh, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs. He made so much money. He knew how to do it. And if I told you anything he said to do, he says this works, everyone would be like, Amen. And yet when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to our own actual lives, we have a person who's begging us to listen. That there is a way we can search with health, with joy, with happiness, with vitality, with sustenance, with support, with excitement. And we all say, I'm good, not for me. How could it be that one person figured it out? And yet we think that this guy who happened to make a lot of money, he figured out life. Does that make sense to anybody? Does that make sense to you? It is the greatest Yetzer Hara in the world. The greatest Yetzer Hara in the world. Rabbi Nachman says, there's nothing better for a person in this life, for a Jew in this world. There's nothing more important for a Jewish man or woman in this world than to find the Tzaddik Emet and to do everything that they can to attach themselves to him. What's the one thing we all refuse to do? That exact thing. Did you ever think how crazy that is? When in the non-Jewish world we're willing to attach ourselves to every idea, culture, and piece of garbage that they sell us on TV, and yet when it comes to a person who actually has your best interest, who has no self whatsoever, who only thinks about how to help you, we say, no, it's a cult. They say the Mashiach was born on Tisha B'Av. Everybody here loves to go to rabbis for segulas, for blessings. I'm going to give you the greatest blessing of your life, and it's not based on a segula, it's not based on hispandut, it's not based on something that's flying in the sky. If you want nachamu in your life, if you really want comfort, there is none in this world. Your only comfort is with Noach, whose name means comfort. Your only comfort is with the Tzaddik. Because as Rabbi Nachman explains, this world is filled with bitterness, and yet there is salt. You ever notice that you dip your bread in salt on Shabbat? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Bread represents the good life. Bread represents parnasa, money, livelihood. Why do we dip it in salt? Because if you eat the bread without salt, it's the most bitter thing in the world. When you try and live a life looking for the good life alone, it is the most bitter life imaginable. But if you dip it in salt, if you dip it in the tzaddik, then you can bring in Shabbat with it. Then you can experience the highest level of peace with it. I didn't grow up religious. I didn't grow up Hasidic. I'm not making enough money to have an agenda. I'm telling you as a person who sees very deeply in a personal way through conversations, through emails, through texts, the reality. Everyone you see on the street is suffering the worst suffering. There's only one person who's not. And he is the one who is attached to the tzaddik. And then all of his suffering is turned to sweetness, no matter what's going on. So I give you all a blessing that you should search for HaShem. And you should have the realization that you have to learn how to do that, because it could end you in a psych ward. Because it could end you on the street. And no rabbi wants to tell you that because they don't want to discourage you from the search. But I don't care about that. I want you guys to live, to really live, to be happy no matter what is going on in your life, to feel omaba and olamazeh. There's many tzaddikim. Which one of you know that gives you tools to deal with everything in your life? Sexuality, physicality, livelihood. Besides prayer and Torah, how to pray, how to learn, that your life is filled with joy, that your life is filled with excitement, that your life is filled with faith. Only the tzaddik knows. And I didn't make it up, because the Arizal teaches it clearly, and nobody argues on the Arizal, because the Torah says very clearly, the only one who has comfort is Noach. And the only people who left in Mitzrayim were the ones who believed in Moshe. Nobody believed Moshe was God. Nobody believed Noach was God when he put them on the boat and took them out of the most disgusting, terrible suffering in the world. But everybody who attached themselves to them understood that they have to learn how to search. And it's not a chiddush, it just makes sense. Any questions from tonight's lesson? Yes?
The person has to toil in this world. He only has a choice whether he toils physical or spiritual.
Yes.
So that's not avoidable.
So the question from the audience was, are you saying that you have a choice in whether you toil in spirituality, meaning in the search for HaShem, or physicality, but you don't have a choice that you toil, only in which one? The answer is, whether you look in the Torah, or whether you look in Chazal, in the Midrashim, in the Gemara, and certainly in the piece that we just learned from Rabbi Nachman, it's clear from everyone, the answer is yes. The only choice you actually have is which one you choose. And you don't even choose the result. You only choose which tree. Are you going to eat from the tree of life? Or are you going to eat from the tree of death? And what happens after that is in Hashem's hands. You can't avoid toiling. You only choose what to toil in. But if you toil with the tzaddik, then the salt, which is actually very bitter on its own, but when you add it to bread, meaning you add it to your own life, then it actually makes the bread taste even better. Any other questions? Should have questions. Because the only person who has questions gets answers. It's also just a practical piece of advice, even though Chazal do teach that. But don't be shy, because Rabbi Nachman says that a person can't experience real Kedusha, he can't experience Hashem in his life without holy chutzpah, without boldness. If a person is not bold in his search for the truth, he will never find it. You can even make up that this question is from somebody else in your family. And we will believe you. But you really should ask. Because I'm sure a lot of people are going to have questions after the class is over. Yeah. What's that? I would love to bring you to the real rabbi. I would love to help you in your journey. I am just your friend. And I know what it's like to be sitting in your chair. Yeah.
What do you feel like is the best way and the healthiest way to start searching for HaShem? Just because I've personally seen a lot of people just go off and do bad.
Sure.
Totally plunge in the opposite path.
Yes, 100%. You know why? Because it says in Masechet Yoma that the Torah can either be the spice of life or the spice of death. What do you mean the Torah can be bad for you? Yes, it can kill you. This is the suggestion I've given everybody for years, and I believe it more now than I ever have in my life. And any of my students know that I give the same suggestion to everybody, not because I have conjured up something, but because I actually think this is the best way. Take an hour out of your day, every single day, away from everything in your life, away from your family, away from your friends, away from your work, in nature, to talk to HaShem. That's one thing. And the second thing is to learn Rabbi Nachman's wisdom every single day. If you combine learning what he teaches along with praying to experience what he teaches, this is the healthiest, happiest, greatest foundation for the start of a true, good life you could ever imagine. I have students, they did Hibodedut, but they didn't learn Rabbi Nachman's teachings. I had people who did Rabbi Nachman's teachings, and they didn't do Hibodedut. I had people who did both, but they didn't want to learn from a teacher. If you are able to learn from a person who knows, along with talking to Hashem for 1 hour every day, this is the greatest foundation I could ever give you, and it's the beginning of an amazing, healthy, happy life for everybody. And again, what's going to happen is people are going to say, an hour, that's a lot. That's insane. What do you mean? I have to work, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. Can I tell you something? I'm going to be very real and honest with you right now. You know how much time you spend in the day worrying about things? You know how many hours you spend worrying about things? You know what that means? You're taking much more than an hour out of your day for something you don't need to do. You don't have a choice about whether you toil. Your choice is, do I want to throw myself on Hashem for 1 hour and not worry the rest of the day? Or do I want to be busy day and night worrying about everything in my life? Somebody goes to a spiritual or say a physical doctor. A lot of people come to me, they say, I did Hibodedut for like 15 minutes here, and I tried it every day, nothing happened to me, I didn't feel anything. Imagine you go see a doctor for the coronavirus. Let's say someone figures out how to heal the coronavirus, and he says you need to take this prescription at these times, this much every day, and you took it 1/4 of the time whenever you wanted. And you come back to the doctor and you say, I don't understand, you told me this is the cure, you said if I do this I'm going to feel so much better, I'm going to feel so much healthier, and it's not helping me. That's right, because you didn't take the prescription. Rabbi Nachman is a spiritual doctor. When he said that every single person should take at least 1 hour out of their day to talk to Hashem in their own words like he's your best friend, then that means at least. And that means anything less than that was not the prescription. Otherwise he would have told you less. Because Rabbi Nachman is not here to make your life difficult. He's here to give you nachamu, to give you rest, to give you peace, to give you joy. But that means I'm going to have to believe him even though it doesn't make sense. And newsflash, this is a life with Hashem. That's the whole spiritual journey. That you have to trust Hashem even when it doesn't make sense. And if you can't do it with your tzaddik, you're not going to be able to do it with Hashem. And that's the whole reason in Az Yashir when we leave Egypt and we're all screaming and singing from happiness, whether it's with Moshe and the guys or Miriam and the girls, we say very clearly before we sing Az Yashir, and we believed in Hashem and in his Eved Moshe. We needed to believe in both to leave Egypt. And if it was enough just to believe in Hashem, you wouldn't need to say that before you sing Az Yashir and you leave your slavery behind. You have a question? You. I saw your hand go up. Was it just a reflex? Okay. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Make it up that someone else said it. I really don't care. Can't, because I know you're going to come up to me as soon as the video is done and you're going to ask me questions. Don't do that. Ask me right now while I have time. Yeah.
So you said your path to Hashem or towards the Torah.
Yes.
Can lead you to insanity or death. Does that mean that you didn't do the right thing?
Yes.
As in during your path? Or?
Yes. You know how I know? Because Hashem values life more than anything. And if you don't feel alive in your search, for sure you're doing something wrong. That doesn't mean everything's going easy. But if you don't feel life, then yeah, there's a big problem. You think Chas v'Shalom Hashem wants to see any of us suffer? The Arizal says Hashem only created the world so that Hashem can reveal one attribute about himself. Rachamim, that he loves you, that he has empathy for you. You think he wants you to suffer your whole life? For thousands of years, everyone had a Rebbe. It says in Pirkei Avot, make yourself a Rebbe. What does it mean to make yourself a rabbi? They say very clearly, if he says go right, you go right. If he says go left, you go left. And if he says go right, and you know it's left, you still go right anyway. This is what Jews did for thousands of years. We are the first generation in history that has no idea what this means because we grew up in the secular world, in Western civilization, in Edom Mamish. And we cannot allow ourselves to listen to anyone besides ourselves, despite the fact that our own voice has led us to the greatest suffering. In anything in life, you need someone who knows what they're doing. It's an obvious thing. If you wanted to be an actor, you need to go to acting school. If you wanted to go be a real estate agent, you need to go learn from someone who sold real estate. This is not, when it comes to spirituality in my whole actual life, that I should need someone like that, that's insane. That's fanatical. Kal v'chomer, all the more so, that you're putting your whole life in somebody's hands. Put it in Noach's hands. That's the only thing he was sent to this world for. Any other questions? And by the way, just a very important thing, what does it mean that you're attached to a tzaddik? It doesn't simply mean that you wear Nachman kippas and that you dance on trucks. It doesn't mean that you listen to techno music and you blaze. To be attached to the tzaddik means to do what he suggests that you do. That means that if he suggests that you should speak to Hashem 1 hour every day, whether you're a Jewish man or a Jewish girl, and you say to yourself, I'm attached to Rabbeinu, I'm attached to Rabbi Nachman, I don't do the things that he says, but I learn his teachings, you're not attached. If you have a spouse and your spouse asks you, hey, can you throw out the garbage? Hey, can you go get me milk? And you don't do any of the things that she says, by the way, you're not attached to your wife either. Attachment comes from doing the ratzon of the other. So if we're saying the greatest blessing in the world is to be attached to the tzaddik, he has the key to sweetening all of the bitterness of this world. Who gets to experience that? The one who is completely attached to him. And to the degree that a person is attached to him and his wisdom and his vice, to that degree he experiences the sweetness. Because that's what it means to be attached. And I would love to sugarcoat it, and I would love to tell you, go do 5 minutes a day, and it keeps the doctors away. But it's not true. Yes?
So let's say you take all the advice, right? But you don't receive like the joy, it's the opposite.
You-
That's the advice.
You're saying you take the advice and you don't experience the sweetness.
Yes.
Okay. So in the beginning, you won't. Why? Many people who have come to my classes that started learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings started to go through the craziest things in their life. And they came to me and said, I don't understand. I feel like I'm finally resonating with something. I feel like something finally feels true. I've been searching for something like this, and I'm trying it, and my family's giving me a harder time. My friends are giving me a harder time. My boss is giving me a harder time. I'm having trouble with this and that. The answer is very simple. The Yetzer Hara is not worried about you when you're not connected to the tzaddik, because you're going to drive yourself insane. But at the moment that you decide that you want to be attached to the actual truth and it's going to bring you the ultimate good, the Yetzer Hara gets very, very nervous. And he creates tremendous obstacles in the beginning. But if you push through that and you force yourself anyway, and he sees that you're not going to back off no matter what, he's going to leave you alone and you're going to see the sweetness. But you need to have tremendous resolve and you can't give up. Any final questions? I have to leave right after this, so I'm not going to be able to stay with anyone because I have to also have Shalom Bayit at home. Yes?
Does that mean whenever a person's suffering, it's not necessarily because they're doing something wrong, it's more or less the Yetzer Hara is just trying to dissuade the person from going to the truth?
Yes, 100%.
Why are we taught else something else?
What are you taught?
That if something's happening wrong in our life, it means we're doing something wrong. Maybe we're doing something right, that's why we're struggling.
So this is the whole point of... Okay. Rabbi Nachman says, what's the difference between tzaddikim and the tzaddik emet? Everybody wants to know because he's constantly talking about this true tzaddik, this Moshe Rabbeinu, this Noach. What's the difference? He says in the 7th lesson of Likutei Moharan, the answer is very simple. Does their advice work or not? If their advice works, they're tzaddikim. If every piece of their advice works, then they're the tzaddik emet. But for you to experience that it works, you're going to have to overcome many obstacles, because Rabbi Nachman says that connecting to the tzaddik is equally difficult as trying to go live in the land of Israel. That the Gemara says that for a person to want to live in the land of Israel, he has to go through many Yisurim to do so, because it's the ultimate good. It's comparable to omaba. Rabbi Nachman says that the land of Israel is a code word for the tzaddik. So whatever you have to go through to get to the land, meaning to get to complete Emunah, you have to go through the same things to get to the tzaddik. Many people, Rabbi Nachman says, are this close to breaking through in their life. They're literally this close to breaking through to godliness. And the Yetzer Hara puts on a full-on assault from every side to scare the bejesus out of them. and they turn back and they never get it the rest of their life. That's frightening. So what does Rabbi Nachman say? Rabbeinu sha'ag b'kol gadol. Go ahead. Rabbeinu screamed in a loud voice, there's no such thing in this world as despair at all. Every single obstacle you face in your life is an illusion that is sent to separate you from the good that you're looking for in your life. All the people that inspire you, that are bringing you to the good, they only got it because they never gave up. There is nothing that separates them and you except for the fact that they did not give up. And if you don't give up and you're invested in the real thing, 100% you will find the good. But just like if you're at work and you wanted to rise up the ranks at work, you're not going to say, oh my gosh, work was really hard today. They gave me like all these portfolios and stuff. I had to learn new. I never did these things before. Nobody says that. They go, I'm going to make so much money. Just a few years here. And all of a sudden, Rabbi Nachman comes along. He gives you new things to do you never did before. And you say to yourself, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Nobody says to do these things. When it comes to money, nobody says such a thing. But when it comes to your actual life in every single way, we say, why should it be like that? Why should it be difficult? Why? Because we grow up in a generation of kiruv, that their only goal is to hold on to you with whatever they have so you do not go marry a non-Jew and flee into the non-Jewish world. But they don't want to tell you the truth, that catching a shiur here or there is not going to change your life. That listening to this rabbi and that rabbi and doing this thing and doing that thing is actually only preventing worst case situations. But they don't believe enough in the generation that they can make it all the way. But I do. And I'm not afraid of what's going to happen. I believe in every single one of you. And I know that anybody who gives themselves completely to the ultimate good is going to find the ultimate good. And I'm willing to do everything I can to help you get there. But it's not going to be Torah anytime. I'm so sorry to tell you. Even though it's great. And it's not going to be Daf Yomi. It's also great. But if anyone can sit here and be honest with themselves, they would say and they know, that thing is not changing your life. That thing is not bringing you joy in difficult times. That thing is not giving you faith when the wave strikes. But if you're willing to put as much effort in this as you are to go be rich, you will be so rich you have no idea. Not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. You're cutting yourself short by investing all of your energy in a world that Rabbi Nachman says doesn't even exist. Take that same effort and bring it to the Tzaddik. You will find the ultimate good. I want to tell everybody here, and we'll end with this, that one of the biggest things that Rabbi Nachman said for his students to do is to be by him for Rosh Hashanah. And that there's many obstacles to getting there because it's like going to the land of Israel. But not to be fooled, because they're just maniyot, they're just obstacles. We have an opportunity for the first time of Tzion to go together as friends, as family, as brothers. I have somebody coming on Monday, Thursday, and Sunday. They are going to lay out for you an entire trip. You don't have to do anything except for pay for an airplane ticket. And I'm doing everything everything I can to help you guys experience the same thing that I've experienced. But you need to play your part and show up. Because if you sit home half of your nights and watch Netflix and ask Hashem, why are you doing this to me? The answer is so obvious. Go do an Aravi Bodhidut and you will realize why Hashem is doing it to you. Because you're investing in nonsense with all of your effort, but in Hashem, you give 5 seconds. Put that effort with Hashem. And you will find all the good. And we will mamash see the Mashiach soon in our days. Everybody have a great night.